Hello everyone, and welcome to the third and final park of my tour around Sturmy Land. Last time I went over the northern parts of the park, covering the magical forest, the mountains, the area between those two, and the northern part of the ice area. They all feature very cool rides, which I tried to personalize as much as possible and give them a character that matches the person that requested them. If you haven't checked it out, the link to the previous videos will be in the description. Today we are going to cover the final areas of the park in the south as well as the rest of the ice area. Previously I went across the areas in a clockwise fashion. However, for this video I will actually go in order in which the ride was built, because it is very relevant to the story of these regions. However, I would also like to mention that the approach that I took previously roughly matches the order of which the ride was built, since I started with the center area, then moved to the entrance, and then more or less worked myself around the park in a clockwise fashion. However, this is of course only a rough estimation, and of course there are some rides which were built later in the previous areas, so they are kinda like anachronisms if you want. The opposite is also true, and there are few rides which are in a later area but were actually built relatively early. However, as space were getting less and less, the later built rides obviously had a new challenge to conquer which the early rides did not, because I could always move them to a different area if I wanted to, and this option slowly faded away. With the introductory rambling completed, let's hop into the park and visit its biggest anachronism. The ride in question is the haunted house ride, Mount Grell. This was actually built in the first or second stream back in December, while the rest of the ice world hasn't even been touched till the end of February. The reason why it was built in the ice area this early was because it was specifically requested to be built there. For this reason it should be obvious why I built it onto the first hill that you can reach from the castle, because I wanted to keep the park compact and didn't want guests to get lost. There are multiple reasons why I wanted to keep the park initially very compact and move from region to region. The first one was that it was obviously easier to just focus on one area first and then go to the next one and then to the next one, instead of hopping all over the place. There are also some gameplay related benefits to this. First of all, a more compact path layout means that you would have less path to clean and therefore would need less handyman early on. And well, this is relevant because I was playing with money, and early on money was actually a bit of a concern. Unlike near the end, I mean, look at my money count. Also, guests that walk off into areas with no rides will eventually count as getting lost, and lost guests will tank your park rating, which means you generate less guests. Also, that means you will get less income, and it will also have other negative implications. For this reason, I also used a lot of no entry signs early on to block people from wandering off into the wilderness. Therefore, the position of the ride makes perfect sense based on the timing on when it was built. Due to this ride being built very early, this also led to a very early unlocking quote-unquote of the transport ride around the park, which is really cool, IMO. Anything else special about this ride? Yeah, I guess it was also a ride that had problems with train crashing, which is very typical for ghost trains, as any OpenRCT2 veteran can tell you. And with that we can move on to another ride which was built much earlier than the other rides in its area. I'm talking about the twin roller coasters, Sanity's End and Insanity's Start, which are named after Sanity's End and are a bit of a pun on his name. The idea with these coasters was that I wanted to build twin coasters which are very intense and are sort of like split mirror images of each other. So one of them would go to the left, the other one would go to the right. They would have the same layout, just mirrored, and they would have an almost crash moment towards the middle of the ride, before crossing over into each other's territory and wind around the few remaining spaces of that the previous layout has left before going back into the station. I actually built this after I finished the area on the opposing side featuring Xerxes Topia, and before I started the mountain area. And the reason for that is relatively simple. Space. This twin coaster complex would obviously become really large, so it would need a lot of space. And also, if I wanted to realize the mirror image idea, I would need a lot of ground which is symmetric to each other. So it should be obvious why I can't build it into the mountains or into the ice area, which also has its river and hills, or the space area, which also features hills. I also can't build it on top of the water, so that leaves the sandy area as the only space where it could go. Due to it also being built relatively early, there wasn't any special tricks like using cheats or disable clearance checks or any plugins that were used in order to create this ride. In spite of this, it took me quite a long time to actually build this track, because it should be obvious that designing a roller coaster and trying to finesse the tracks around the previously built track and then finding a way back to the exit should be very tricky. However, despite its very simple concept, I think it's a very cool idea, and therefore it's actually one of my favorite rides in the park. Well, I count the twin coaster as one ride. And next we can move on to the third major anachronistic area of the Southern Park half. This is a request by Naisu, an artist that I commissioned multiple times in the past. And he wanted a pirate-themed area. This tiny little pirate island. Obviously it makes sense why the pirates live on the ocean, but because of the twin coaster I also built it relatively early. The reason again is to keep the park relatively compact. I wanted the twin coaster to be reachable without having to go through the castle, so I obviously needed some alternative pathworks between the entrance area and the sandy area. So I obviously built one here near the train station, but I also needed to establish a path from the Wandering Wolf Water World to the sandy area. I did this by building this little lift over the ocean. Since I planned the pirate island to be reachable by the lift, and I wanted to build the lift, so it obviously makes sense that I built the pirate island first before building the lift. The island itself does have the stuff that you would expect from a pilot island, like pirate ships sailing around the island, and the pirate ship ride, and a haunted pirate hideout. It also features Caribbean-looking houses, but it also features a huge cliffside, which you can go up to the mountain, and then you can look at this and enjoy a nice view across the ocean. Alternatively, you can go into the cave and meet up with the monster that lives inside of it. The entertainer is obviously Captain Naisu, who walks around the island, entertains the guest, and explains them why Theo is the best Trails character. Okay, jokes aside, this should give you a rundown what was already there before I actually began focus on the southern half of the park. The southern half of the park also features a second recurring theme. The theme is trust. You see, previously, for the most part, people told me, oh, I want something specific. But a lot of the people actually never played Roller Coaster Tycoon, and they don't really have an idea what you can do in the game and what to request, so they just told me, oh, you can build anything you like and honor it after me. I'll trust you and your judgment. Due to this, most of these trust rights landed in the southern half of the park, Because, well, it's easier to build something if you have a rough idea what you are supposed to build. More or less everything in the sandy area is a trust ride, therefore you could may as well name it the trust area. The sandy area is complemented by a couple of roller coasters. First of all, we have this coaster, which is called The Story About the Young Girl. The young girl in question is Tiana Omlan, and the coaster is based on her VTuber lore. Her VTuber lore is actually quite interesting because she tried to incorporate all of her different designs that she originally went through before coming to her final design into her lore, which makes it quite an adventurous story. I mean, I don't want to go too much into detail here, because otherwise I might just end up reading like the entire 12 or 13 pages of lore that she gave me. But the TLDR is, she started off as a human and eventually died due to unknown circumstances, but she didn't want to die, and a god, whose name I forgot, saw her and decided to give her a new life. She therefore was reborn as a fairy, and she spent her new childhood in the forest playing with other fairies, but she was quote-unquote different. She somehow grew up into a Dullahan, and when she was coming of age, she decided she wanted to be a servant of the god who revived her. However, her god had many enemies who wanted to get rid of him, and getting rid of him also included getting rid of his servants. However, despite all her effort, she could not overcome the enemies, and she eventually fell. Her enemies decided to apply a dark ritual on her, entrapping her soul into a mechanical body, and from there on out she would be forced to serve them instead. However, at one point the original gods left the earth, and the servants were eventually put to rest in a temple. As you can see, her lore is quite complex, so it should be of no surprise that I had to use plenty of space to turn it into a roller coaster. And right next to it we have another roller coaster, which is called A Little Lob for Love, which is obviously for Lawford, a lob VTuber. I originally wanted to build something for her, had another idea, then I didn't like it and completely scrapped it, and then I was thinking of a different idea, and well, then I came up with this. It certainly gives off vibes of the Derpy Pig from the last episode, and I sure was inspired by it to build this ride. We again have the main body being formed by the track, and having used accessory to form the animal accessories like ears and feet and the tail. This one also has a little bit of a glass body to give it a bit of a 3D effect. I decided to place it here because Tiana calls Love her sister, and well, I wanted to have people closely related to each other grouped together. On the other side of the sandy area we have another trust ride. It's for Tsuki no Kemuri, and I decided to go with a beach resort for him. This idea came to me due to his previous design, which is now outdated. It must be the shirt, but it definitely gave me like a tourist vibe. So a beach resort obviously makes sense. The beach resort obviously has some tropical houses, a little hotel. It obviously has some food stalls, an ice cream stall, a beach where people can sit on. And for the featured rides we have jet skis and a gigantic water slide. By the way, I used the tile inspector to make the path that goes from the end of the ride back to the station invisible, so it looks like the guests would drop right into the water. The area was then furthermore supplemented by a few smaller things. Next to Tsuki Beach, we have a little veggie garden for Sasa. I think this is very in character for her. It also has a little shrine for Shana with a few burning candles. May she rest in peace, and I hope she will be happy knowing that we didn't forget her. Next to the garden we have a small world for Eva Tiana. For her, I kind of did a little bit of a magical girl themed world. It mostly consists of greenery and 2 standard flat rides, which I probably rebranded to give magical girl flair. The saucers with the flower power cars were obviously now a magical girl training ground. And the shiny spark wheel was rebranded as a magical girl transformation. To add even more funny anime cliches to it, we obviously have a magical girl high school to which magical girl Eva obviously goes to. This little world is a little bit unique because it's a trust ride, sorta, and it sorta is not. Originally, Eva gave me freedom to do whatever I wanted for her, but once I proposed the magical girl world idea, she was actually somewhat involved in the design. Like she gave me pointers about what color she wanted to use, what color she wanted for her dress, who would be the rivals that she would fight against, etc. etc. The sandy area is then further rounded up by fewer standard flat rides like the magic carpet, the flying saucers, an observation tower, the whip, which is an Enterprise redesign which I got from NE Designs, and the standard twist. And with that, we can now talk about the next group of rides in the park, which I will call late requests. These requests came in when I was almost done building the park and barely had any space left, essentially only in the area number 6. 3 rides fall into this category. First of all, we have this really weirdly looking coaster for Bosu. This coaster is my attempt at recreating Party Promenade from Fall Guys. And let me tell you, this coaster was quite a handful to build and I had to use the entire arsenal of tools that I had available to me at the time. This coaster is officially classified as a laydown coaster, but I had to color the track in different colors and had to use the Edit Ride plugin to transform the different colors part of the track into other ride types. I used the dinghy slide to recreate the pipes, and I used the invisible track to create big jumps. Sadly, the dinghy slide has no drawable vertical track piece, so I had to help myself by using these swimming rings. I used the giant marshmallows to recreate the platform of Fall Guys. I know the platform of Fall Guys aren't supposed to be candy, but whenever I see the colorful graphic theme, I always get reminded of Candyland for some reason. Listen, I cannot help it, okay? I also tried to retain other features of the ride. Like Party Promenade, my ride also has shooting cannons from the side, and it also has alternative pipe paths, although these paths are just dummies and therefore decorations. Maybe I could have made them work into real paths by using some kind of shoestring, but I'm sadly not very comfortable in using these yet. What I like to point out though is that this is the ride that took me the longest to build. On stream, I didn't take that long on actually building it, but this is because I had to do a lot of testing off stream. Like, I spent at least 2 days to make a sort of workable version of this ride before I could finally go back on stream for this. And let me tell you, in the process, this ride crashed at least 8 times, giving me a massive headache in the process. Also, fun fact, if you try to change the ride type into literally anything but a laydown coaster, it will stop working. Like, it will either crash immediately when it's running, or when it's closed and you change the ride type and try to reopen it, the game will not let you do it. This should give you the idea that this ride is literally held together by hopes and dreams, and I had to use a lot of black magic to make it work in the first place. Speaking of black magic, this is a perfect transition to the next ride, right next to it. It's Mel's Demonic Coaster. You might remember Mel from the haunted house in the Magic Forest, but actually, both this ride and this roller coaster were requested at the same time by them. And while it's easy to place the haunted house basically anywhere where you'd like, it's not possible to place this gigantic coaster in the magical forest without actually destroying it. So that's why it's here. And when the request said demonic, I took it very literal. It has hell flames and demons everywhere, and also a lot of craters. which you can jump into, and active volcanoes, where you jump out of. So yeah, I think it's a very cool looking roller coaster. And I actually hit a little bit of a surprise in the ride. The ride actually has a second secret entrance. If you go there, you'll end up in a room where Mel performs a demonic ritual on you. Or that is what they claim to do. I have no idea if it does anything. It did nothing to me when I tried it out. Huh? Oh, that's what it does? Oh, no wonder I didn't notice any effect. I guess go into that room at your own risk then. Okay, jokes aside, functionally this is literally just a space ring which I made invisible and I used scenery to enhance. I actually took this idea from Dirkling's Imagination Mega Park, where he actually built a very similar ride to this. Speaking of Dirkling, he also had a hand in the creation of the last requested ride. This request actually happened live on stream and came from Mark Attel, or Speedo Alien. What he requested, he wanted something themed after robots versus aliens. Funnily enough, a week before that, Dirkling released a video about how he built a robot wars in his Imagination Mega Park, and I immediately got remembered of it and thought I could adapt this ride idea into form it something what Mark requested. Robot vs. Alien Wars itself is actually just a flying saucer whose ride type was changed into a crooked house. By doing this, the saucers actually go into autopilot and pilot themselves, funnily enough. I don't know why it works like this, but it does. I then used the Edit Ride Vehicle plugin to change the 8 saucers into 2 visual teams of 4 each. One team was robots in orange and white, and the other was aliens who are colored in green. I then built a massive stadium around the show, where people can sit and enjoy the ride. This one essentially uses the same technique that I used to create the grandstands in the Yokai Ice Village, the theater for Kyoko, and the fake cinema for Inasan. By the way, I have to thank OpenRCT Tutorial for providing me with the tutorial on how to build these rides. I completely forgot to thank him for that the 3 times it came up previously. Shame on me. During the ride creation, Mark told me what he wanted, what colors he wanted them to be, what kind of vehicles he wanted on the different teams, etc. And well, this was the second time someone actually did active ride design with me and did not just leave me to my own devices. And with that, literally every request was taken care of. And well, I still had space. So, what to do with it? I could have just called it a day here and be done with it, but I didn't want to do this because otherwise the park would have felt incomplete to me. So instead, I just thought of some rides for myself and decided, oh, I like the idea and I want to build them. And well, after I was done, I put the rides up for adoption in my community and people who wanted to have the ride themed after them could request them. As a first ride, we have a Skidoo Outdoor Adventure. It's essentially a kart track where I made the track invisible and I changed the cars into skidoos using the Edit Ride Vehicle plugin. It obviously goes up and down a lot, and in order to make it more interesting, I also placed some ramps where you can jump over some barrels. It also has a secret hidden tunnel in it, where you can just jump into and where you come out of the darkness. This ride was later claimed by Sari, who has a snow leopard as her avatar. Due to that, I wanted to place some snow leopards all over the ride, but sadly any designs didn't have a scenery object for that. So what I did instead was using white tigers and just pretend. Just pretend these are snow leopards, okay? The second ride idea I had, while I was still in the ice area, was a hot spring hotel. It is very traditional with a separate entrance for male and female bath. It also has a hotel lounge with a hotel restaurant where you can chill and enjoy some food. And well, if you go upstairs, you will obviously find the hotel rooms. Even though there wasn't enough budget anymore to actually put furniture inside of them. This ride was actually adopted by Hannah. Funnily enough, I raided into her when she was having her birthday stream, and I was like, you know, I actually still have a few adoptable rides. Consider it your birthday gift that you can adopt one of the rides in the park. And well, she picked this one. So yeah, congrats Hannah on becoming the owner of a small hot spring hotel. For the last little corner, I was actually really scrambling for ideas. And I went through all the scenery that I had and checked which themes I didn't touch yet. And well, there were two themes, Australia and mining. So I decided to include both of them in the final corner of the park. So yeah, Little Australia obviously is reminiscent of the outback. So it has typical Australian animals in it, like kangaroos, some rattlesnakes of course, ostriches, scorpions, and well, koalas and eucalyptus trees. Of course, you can take a look at further wildlife inside of this little crab house. And for a roller coaster, I had to think of something that was kind of Australian, but also didn't take up that much of a space. And well, the thing that I came up with was a boomerang. So we have this roller coaster which looks like a boomerang. Even though it looks like a very, very deformed boomerang. So, And the last free space was occupied by a mining area, featuring a small diamond twist, and of course the crazy mine, which goes through the mountain. And I also wanted to build a Virginia reel in the park, because it's one of my favorite rides in the game actually. And I didn't build it yet. So I also built it in this area. Visually, I tried to make it look like a conveyor belt, and the cars of the Virginia reel are supposed to be like little buckets where you put your gold in, and well, they go down and they get shaken everywhere and go through water, and hopefully by doing that you can uncover some gold. I put both areas up for adoption, but sadly nobody wanted to have them. And you know what? I'm okay with this. And with that, we're almost done and only one ride is remaining. Maybe you remember that one ride outside of the castle on the little island where I said, oh, I will come back to this later. Because, well, now it is time that I come back to it. I actually planned to build this as a very, very final ride of the park from the very, very beginning. What the ride is called is simply Let's Play OJ. For those who don't know, my very first stream ever is where I played 100% orange juice, and I felt building a ride that resembles that game would be a perfect way to go full circle sorta. And since it is a multiplayer game, and I actually know a lot of people in my community from that game, I decided, you know, let's make it a giant OJ board where everyone is joining for a game of OJ. So yeah, if we go around here, we have me at the entrance, and then we have Shana and Sasa over here. We have Ursa, Sika, Kurua, Lincoln, Glitch, Ina, Chicago, Zan, Tiana, Summer, Xerxes, Moni, Foxy, Ellie, Peachy, Rain, Wolf, Zeke, Kyoko, and Menya, and of course Grell. So yeah, everyone came together to play OJ. And yeah, that's about it. And that's about it. this is more or less everything that I've built into Sturmy Land. It was quite a journey, and I'm very happy to have completed this project. The videos are already a marathon, but I really tried to make it short, and I could probably tell you even more stuff. But hey, let's just leave it at that, because I feel like I held you hostage for already way too long. So, thank you very much everyone for watching, and I wish you all a very good day. Bye bye.